So far, you've learned that both structures and classes are general purpose building blocks for your code. Now you might be wondering, what type of building blocks should you use for your programs and what makes them so different? Well, as you might recall, structures are value types while classes are reference types. And over the next few minutes, you'll learn more about the similarities and differences between them so that you can better understand which to use for your code. In the Swift programming language, there are two categories of data types: reference types and value types. The key difference is how they behave in the memory of a computer when running code. Do you recall Little Lemon's signature chocolate cookie recipe from earlier? Suppose that instead of Mario and Adrian modifying the same recipe on a system, Mario sends a copy of the recipe directly to Adrian to edit. Both Adrian and Mario have their own copies. So, when Adrian makes changes to his copy, it won't affect Mario's. This is the function of a value type. A value type always stores a copy when assigned to a variable or constant. Let's review an example of how this scenario can be presented in code using structs. First, you define a recipe structure with an ingredients property of type string array. Then, you create a recipe instance with cocoa powder and flour for the ingredients parameter and assign it to a Mario recipe variable. Next, you assign the Mario recipe variable to a new variable called Adrian recipe. This copies and assigns Mario recipe's value to Adrian recipe. Adrian recipe is now another instance of the recipe structure with its own copy of the ingredients. Changing a property in Adrian recipe won't affect Mario recipe. For example, suppose you update the ingredients property of Adrian recipe to only cocoa powder. The ingredient property of Mario recipe will remain as cocoa powder and flour. If you print the ingredients of Mario recipe and Adrian recipe, you'll observe that the console logs cocoa powder and flour for Mario recipe and only cocoa powder for Adrian recipe. The example demonstrates how a value type instance creates a copy of its data. Reference types, on the other hand, behave differently in a computer's memory. Instead of storing a copy when assigned to a variable, it stores its location memory like a memory reference. Next, let's review what happens when you use a reference type. Using the same recipe instance code example, let's replace the struct keyword with a class keyword. Now, updating Adrian recipe's ingredients also updates Mario recipes. This is because the variables point to the same memory reference. And if you print the ingredients of Mario recipe and Adrian recipe again, you'll notice that the console logs cocoa powder for both. When it comes to using reference types, like classes, making a value change in one area of your code could affect 10 other parts of your program. For this reason, it's recommended that you use structures as your main building blocks, since they are less likely to cause unexpected programming behavior. Reserve the use of classes for when you need a shared state that changes over time. With that being said, you'll use a mixture of value and reference types throughout your career as a Swift developer. So if you ever get stuck deciding which one to use, just think of the examples you explored in this video and you should be well on your way.